Roll Tide, everybody. Welcome to Cover Crimson with Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. Look, all the coaches spoke today. We're going to talk about that in this prolific offense that we're expecting to be one of the tops, not just in the SEC, but in all of college football. Thank you for hanging out. Like and subscribe, and let's get this thing started. I'm pretty excited. We're going to talk football right now. Roll Tide, man. I said it twice. All right. Did you enjoy the press conferences today? You got to hear from Kane Womack and Nick Sheridan and then Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I feel like they're pretty good at not giving you a lot, but we got enough where we can have a little discussion about it. The fact that we know more, looks like Jaden Roberts is going to be available. It looks like Jam Miller is going to be available. Jeremiah Alexander is getting close, but Kalen DeBoer said that he probably wouldn't be available for this weekend. So that's one to, at least kind of look at. He's obviously not going to be really in the defensive rotation that we know of right now, but he is a special teams contributor and he does add depth. So if you have to start working into some of that depth because, it's a lopsided victory, that could have been some opportunities for Jeremiah Alexander. So, but, I would say having three guys that you kind of question going in, having two of those guys available with one being pretty close, I would say that the health seems pretty good.
Yeah, way better than years past. Guys, don't forget, too, Emily Grace, who's with our Cover Crimson team, is actually there right now in Tuscaloosa. She's going to jump on here shortly and give us a report from campus. But all you guys in the comments section and ladies, good to see you, Southern Red, and thank you. Roll Tide. I'm throwing out the Roll Tides. One for you too, Chris. Appreciate you, Norman, and a Roll Tide to you. Is it really Western Kentucky hate week, though? I hate to tell you that I don't know much about them other than their quarterback played for LSU and for Auburn, which is two of our biggest rivals. But Little Joe, Little Clint, Little Joe, Roll Tide to you. Bobby, Roll Tide, man. I'm just – this is the roll call right now. Jim, we got a lot to talk about, but thank all of you guys for being with us. All right, let's just get into the offense. DeBoer was asked about Jalen Milroe. He talked glowingly about him. Really, everybody that was brought up. It was such a different feeling than Nick Saban when you would ask a question, and then he would question the fact that you were asking that question and then talk to the player through kind of putting you down a little bit, like, who told you that Jalen Milroe was ready to go? Who told you that Jalen Milroe was the guy that was going to go out there and lead this team? Okay, yeah, he's going to lead this team. But is he ready? That's up to him to be ready. Has he done the work that we asked him to do? Yes. Has he? It's more like, hey, they were thanking him for just putting up with them, which is crazy. Thanking Milroe for putting up with the change in coaching.
Yeah, I mean, and like is Caleb Odom really a complete receiver at this point? I think he's getting close, right? I mean, I think he's getting I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's going to be a contributor this year. But, I feel when that question was asked, I was like, man, it's a good thing that Kalen DeBoer is now the head coach because I feel like that would have been a much different answer from Nick Saban. But, it's an opportunity to be able to ask about some of those young guys that are maybe, I say on down the depth chart like he's buried. He's certainly not. Like I said, I think he's going to contribute, but you're asking questions about the, seventh or eighth receiver right now, and he's a freshman. And I get that because he is a freshman, because he is kind of a guy that fans want to know more about and know if he's going to contribute and in what capacity. But, we got a little bit of insight as far as what he's been providing. And it's something that I brought up a lot this offseason. We talked about the fact that he could kind of be a ball winner, go up and win those 50-50 balls, and how that could be valuable to the offense. And he said that will be valuable to the offense both this year and moving forward. So the fact that he said this year, that told me, okay, we're going to see him in some capacity. I don't know if it'll be a major role, but, you have to feel pretty encouraged about maybe him providing that element and giving defenses, a little something extra to prepare for every week.
Well, it's great having Jalen Milroe. I mean, we talked about this before with the experience to come in at quarterback and basically, run the show. I mean, and to have a quarterback whisperer like Kalen DeBoer as the coach and Nick Sheridan, someone's been around for a while. Offensively, there just feels like there's so much more stability than we've had in a long time at Alabama.
Yeah, definitely a lot more stability. I mean, when you talk about the offensive line and just kind of where it's at, it is interesting, Mitt, because you look at that Florida State Georgia Tech game this weekend, and I do want to be careful this week not to overhype guys. I know I can get sometimes, you get excited about guys, you hear good things, you buy into all the positivity. One thing, if you're a fantasy person, I'll be wondering about, hey, how's this guy progressing? I'll Twitter search his name, and it's just glowing reviews. This guy's going to be incredible. And then you Google this, or not Google, but you'll search this guy on Twitter. Oh, this guy's going to be incredible. This guy's doing great. And then it's like, okay, it seems like everybody's going to be fantastic. Nobody's going to have any weaknesses or any problems. Everybody's going to have a big role. So I'm guilty of that sometimes. If you were to ask me singularly about Caleb Odom, maybe I get a little bit too hyped up and I talk about how big of a part of the offense I think he's going to be and what he provides and this and that. And then it's like, okay, but you also said that about 7 other receivers. How many receivers you think are going to be a part of this rotation? But, so I want to be careful with that. I also want to be careful because I think Florida State fell into the trap of there was this one big assumption that a lot of other assumptions were built off of. And that assumption was this was going to be the best defensive line in America. And, that is kind of where they started. Where did that come from? I think it was kind of the fact that they had kind of some freaks, like a Daryl Jackson. When you look at him, height, weight, speed, 6'5", 330-pound interior defensive lineman, can absolutely fly, apparently. They got guys like that. You got transfers coming in, all these different things. And so you start thinking, okay, best defensive line in the country. Maybe they're having a lot of early success against that offensive line in camp, or really whether it be in the spring or in the summer or whatever. And then maybe the offensive line starts having a little bit more success. And then the next assumption is, okay, we think this is the best defensive line in America. Our offensive line's running the football pretty well against them. We're going to have a really good run game. And then, other things start to branch off of that. And so 2 of the major assumptions going into the year about Florida State was that defensive front was going to be amazing, their defensive line, and that they were going to be able to run the football. And neither of those 2 things were true. And so this is kind of what I'm not going to back off on a lot of my predictions or how I feel about positions. But I want to at least put it on people's radar that this kind of thing can happen. I think to an extent this happened with the offensive line last year and just how it kind of created a lot of buzz and overhype. And one or two people say something and everybody starts running with it and the hype gets out of control. Ron Williams has been making a lot of big plays. We think he's going to be a huge part of the offense. Maybe you get into week 1 or week 2, or maybe it's not until week 3 where it's exposed. But maybe it's the fact that Alabama had a freshman corner going against him, or a transfer who was learning a new defense in a new environment. Maybe that was contributing a little bit to Ryan Williams having a lot of success in camp. Maybe it doesn't translate, or maybe it absolutely does. I just want to point out that these things can happen, and we need to be careful of it going into a year, not to overhype stuff, which once again, I'm guilty of. But I certainly think it's going to be a really good football team, and they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. I don't think it's going to be a Florida State problem.
Well, Florida State lost like their whole roster, though. I mean, remember they went into the Georgia game with like so many guys transferred out, and then they had a totally different team. Now, I'm going to tell you, I picked Georgia Tech to win straight up, and it was basically because I thought it takes time to mesh a bunch of guys together on a roster like this, and I don't look at Alabama, especially on offense, as a team that's going to have that issue. I mean, the offensive line for the most part is intact. You heard Coach say, "Hey, Roberts he expects him to practice and play." Obviously Tyler Booker, who we all love, and I saw on the chat here, you guys enjoyed his interview on the Next Round today, and you should. I mean, he's a great interview. He's the perfect guy to have on the interview, right? Riley said that, but he's on there. Caden Proctor's on there. We got a snapper this year, or a center that can snap the ball. So the offensive line is going to be intact. Wide receiver, a lot of those guys are returning, but you mentioned the talent that some of the young guys have. But you're right. I mean, who knows what's going on in the secondary? The pass rush is something that's really important. I know you were going to kind of kick into a lot of the defensive stuff tomorrow, but I just feel like after watching Coach DeBoer talk and Nick Sheridan, I just feel so comfortable with where this offense is. I mean, I just think that this is going to be the rock of the team. And and then kind of moving forward, like I think that if the other teams give the ball back to Alabama, I got a feeling that scoring points isn't going to be an issue.
I mean, you would think so. Yeah. And I'm right there with you. And once again, I don't want anybody to panic or anything. I just wanted to put that out there because it was so incredible watching it. Like Pete Thamel before the game's over here talking about them having the best defensive line, in college football. And then just watching Georgia Tech's offensive line, which is probably better than we were anticipating going into the year. I don't think it's elite though. And they were pushing that defensive front around for 4 quarters, giving them all they wanted. And that's what won Georgia, the trenches is what won Georgia Tech the game. And it's like, how do you miss that bad? But then you think back and you say, okay, I guess everybody was kind of saying the same thing about Alabama's offensive line last year. And, I think it had a lot of talent. It had a lot of ability. But, when you were constantly putting yourself in unfavorable positions, 3rd and longs, because you can't have early down success for one reason or another, that offensive line wasn't built for that. And then it ends up being an offensive line that everybody hyped up going into the year, and it's allowing, as many sacks as it did, ranking outside the top 100 in sacks allowed. And it's one of the worst offensive lines in the Nick Saban era. So it's like, okay, sometimes we get things wrong, and that's not necessarily a media problem. Sometimes it's an internal, coaches feel a certain way, or people who are watching these practices feel a certain way about a certain group, and they think it's going to look a certain way. And then it, come to find out it doesn't. And so that's an issue that Florida State ran into. If, we end up being way wrong on a position, if Ron Williams comes out and he struggles or he doesn't have a major role or whatever, it's like, there's probably a reason for that. But I will say, I'm feeling pretty confident in a lot of our predictions. This does feel like an offense that's going to be able to move the football. I think they're going to be really good on the ground. I think they're going to be a lot more of a ground-based offense. Not saying they're going to be purely run-based, but I think they're going to be a lot more focused on the run game than a lot of people realize because of what Kalen DeBoer and company did at Washington. But they had a very different group of players. And when Dylan Johnson's really your only competent running back, and he's a undrafted free agent talent to the NFL. I thought he was a really good college back, but he ended up going undrafted. And you got 1st round, 2nd round receivers, you got a 1st round quarterback. Okay, maybe you're going to throw the football a lot more than you run the football. That's not the case at Alabama. They got a quarterback who can run the football. They got running backs who can run the football. They got a good offensive line that can run block, or we think they can run block. And so, I wouldn't be shocked at all if they're a lot more run based than a lot of people realize going in.
Yeah. Well, and that'll be something different for DeBoer too, to have a dominant run game. And, he was asked about Jam Miller, said just like Roberts expects him to play. That's big news going into the first game. I think Justice Haynes is going to have a huge year. Before Emily Grace jumps on with us, let's just kind of have a little fun here and talk about some of the best offensive players on the team, like some of the winners of awards that we would give out. Okay. Who do you think will be the most underrated player on the offense?
Man, I thought I was going to come in saying Robbie Oots.
I love him.
I do too, but I'm not going to. I'm going to pivot my answer. We could talk about Robbie. I think he deserves to be in this conversation, but it's very much upsetting me that Jaden Roberts isn't getting more preseason recognition. And I know amongst Alabama fans, he's not very underrated. He has a lot of respect amongst the Alabama fan base. He didn't even make 3rd team preseason All SEC. And not only do I think he should be in the 1st or 2nd group, I think we should be talking about him. Should he be making some All-American preseason list? I understand there's a lot of good offensive linemen. So maybe he wouldn't be making those, and I'd be fine with that. But the fact that he's not even on the 3rd team all SEC list to me is absolutely criminal. I don't think he's that far behind Tyler Booker. I really don't. Yeah. And so even though Alabama fans really appreciate this guy, the rest of the country doesn't, but they're going to find out soon enough.
Really? That's interesting. I love how passionate you are. And he's been a little banged up, but hopefully that doesn't affect his play at the start of the season. All right. Who do you think the top freshman is going to be on offense?
I'll give you a guess, Mick.
Yeah. Rhino, the Hollywood guy.
Yeah. Hollywood. And Marquise Mays, a former Alabama receiver, tweeted out last night talking about there being a new new deuce, running wild on opposing defenses in the SEC. And, obviously that comparison is number related right now. Obviously, Ron Williams hadn't done anything yet. There might be some Bama fans who are upset with that comparison, but this is a former pretty productive receiver at Alabama who's making that comparison himself. And, I think Ron Williams is going to have a lot of success. It might be kind of a building thing. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a major role from week one, but if it's not, I don't think fans should be disappointed. You should be looking at it and saying, okay, and we'll be talking about this next week, but how much of it is, okay, he's coming in mop-up duty,
Right.
and that's where a lot of his work and action's coming? Or is it, hey, when the game was still quote unquote in doubt, you were seeing him get action, you were seeing him get targets, and maybe he makes, some pretty impressive plays. Like last year with Justice Haynes, it was pretty clear from the jump, even though there was all this hype going into the year, that he wasn't going to be a major part of the offense, at least in the early stages, and ended up not being a part of the offense until the end of the year, unless it was mop-up duty. That role was pretty clearly defined. So that's something, if you're a fan, to look out for. When is he coming in? What does the usage look like? Is it something like when he is getting in the game, like Jalen Hill last year? They're working to get him a lot of action and a lot of targets while he's in. These are all things to monitor. But I think Ron Williams, I wouldn't be shocked if it was from week one, but at least by weeks 3 and 4, I think he's going to be a major part of this offense and a really important piece to their chances of winning not only the SEC, but maybe potentially a national championship this year.
I agree with that. Breakout player.
Justice Haynes. And I thought about going a couple of different directions here. I always do. I have internal debates. I'm like, okay, do I want to go Justice Haynes? He feels like the easy answer for a lot of people. Sophomore, got some run, mop-up duty last year, ended up having a bigger role in the Rose Bowl, was productive, was very effective. And so, with his talent coming out of high school and the fact that he's been, on campus for a year and college for a year, the fact that you're adding that Kalen DeBoer system, I definitely ended up going with him, but I also thought about Will Conform because I feel like he's a guy. We talk a lot about these other 4 offensive linemen, and I don't think Jaden Roberts is getting enough respect. The other 3 guys were on, either first or second all SEC, predictions. And, a guy like Will Conform being that 5th guy, I think he ends up winning the job, and I think he ends up being very productive and very good as well.
Yeah, watch out for Kendrick Law as well. And then finally, this is such an easy one here, as we're about to bring on Emily Grace, but MVP.
You say it's easy. I went with Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe is a pretty easy choice to me, but I also thought when I was thinking about going with Will Conformby, I also considered Justice Haynes being my MVP as well, because I think he is going to be a major part of this offense. And I think that, Kalen DeBoer is going to build a lot of this offense around him. He'll build it around Jalen Milroe as well, but keep an eye on Justice Haynes. I think he's in for a massive year. He's going to be sharing the workload with Jam Miller, but you'll see a lot of Justice Haynes as well.
All right. Well, let's bring in Emily Grace from Tuscaloosa and see if this works. How you doing? Roll Tide.
Hey,
Can
guys.
You hear us?
Yeah. Script A right behind me. Seems like I'm in good company for that.
Yeah, I see that. A beautiful day, a little bit hot, but a beautiful day for practice and press conferences. What did you learn today being able to hear from all 3 coaches?
Yeah, for sure. I think you said it right there. Being able to hear from all 3 coaches was a luxury that we were not given under the Saban era. So that's kind of a preview of what it'll look like game week going forward, as we'll get to hear from Sheridan, Womack, and then cap things off with Coach DeBoer in the Naylor Stone media room. But it was really interesting to see kind of what their energy was coming into a game week, right? Because we have seen them in the spring, we've seen them in the fall camp, but now it's here. I think that Coach Womack's energy cannot be understated, even in that setting. Coach Sheridan, a little more understated, a little more reserved. And then Coach DeBoer as well. He was very calm, seemed very similar to every other press conference we've done with him. But Coach Womack actually said that is his superpower. He's able to maintain consistency in any setting, whether it's hanging out, grilling steaks, like he said, by the pool, whether it's 4th quarter of a big game or at practice. He's the same guy through and through. And I'm starting to learn that as well.
one question I had is just, last year I think was really your only year covering Saban. You talk about the energy and just kind of how things just feel different. It seems like everything's very relaxed. There's less tension, it feels like, in some of these interviews or whatever. It really does. From a media's perspective, how different has that been for you? I understand you only dealt with 1 year of Saban, but even though we might not always get very informative answers, it might be a lot of coach speak or ways of navigating questions. How has that been for you? As far as, do you feel more comfortable asking some of the tougher questions that Saban maybe didn't want to answer?
Love this.
So I'm very thankful that I was in the Saban regime for only a year. I don't say only a year. I say that I'm very thankful that I got that year with him, because it has really molded how I ask questions, because I felt like, okay, if I'm coming out of college and I'm having to speak with Coach Saban, the first time I spoke to him was over the phone for the SEC teleconference. And when I tell y'all the tension I felt over the phone, this man cannot see me. I don't even have to look at him. But the anxiousness I had in that setting, it was crazy. When you would walk into the media room that's right in front of me, Malmore Athletic Facility, you could sense him coming. And it was everyone stood up straighter. Everyone kind of collected themselves, and it was collective holding your breath. Who is he going to, I don't want to say lash out on it, but who is he going to use their question to get his point across with? It is completely different. I do think that there is a certain level of relaxation, because you also think about this. The media is a tricky thing, because we get to know a lot of things. We get to communicate a lot of things to the fans. However, there's still so much that we don't know, but we feel like we do. This media group has been in that facility longer than DeBoer has, for the most part. Now, if anyone's really acknowledging that, I don't know, but you have to feel like there's a level of comfortability that the media has that Coach DeBoer wasn't afforded in his first few months here. It's very different. For example, someone asked Coach Sheridan on an injury update, and it was the first kind of showing of, we're not going to talk about that. He said, that's a better question for Coach DeBoer. And when Coach DeBoer answered it, there was no anxiousness, I feel like, in the room of what he might say. Answered it clearly, and actually asked the reporter, said, hey, who was that last guy you said? That never happened. If Coach Saban forgot 2 of the 3 players, you're not getting those other 2.
Yeah, that's a good. We were joking about one of the questions and what Coach Saban probably would have said before we went on the air today. But I love the tone that Coach DeBoer has. I think that it's a tone that's definitely worthy of a good media that just wants to cover Alabama and do the best job they can to get information out on the team. But I felt like DeBoer was very confident and appreciative of Jalen Milroe. Just really got that vibe today.
Yeah, and we've heard that from him basically this entire time he's been at Alabama. He's one of those leaders on the team alongside the Malachi Moores, the Tyler Bookers, Deontay Lawson, that Coach DeBoer has high praise for. One thing that stuck out to me was how consistent Jalen has been. He's also noted that he's grown a lot. And I think that was something that Alabama fans wanted to know. We have this quarterback from last season. There was uncertainty surrounding him to begin with, but he stepped in that leadership role. What can he do now that he's comfortably in that spot? And I think that Alabama fans will be pleasantly, I don't want to say surprised, because I think we all know what he's capable of, but there have been some growth points met from a coaching standpoint in the last few weeks.
On defense, it was interesting how Womack you could tell he's very passionate about, his job. He's very passionate about the defense. He obviously knows what he's talking about, for sure. If you're going to be one of the top defense coordinators at one of the top programs in the country, that's going to happen. But, he also was asked, some questions about maybe expectations for some of these guys going in, particularly maybe at corner, maybe at pass rusher. What was his answer?
Yeah, I think that the overarching theme, especially with the wide receiver group, the cornerback group, is you have young guys that have to step up, similar to that wide receiver room as well. And it seems like guys are kind of expected to grow up quickly, but there's such great leadership that he's seen, and he is so passionate. I think one thing that stuck out to me is that it seems like in the last days, weeks of fall camp, the defense has really arrived in the sense of they're understanding that scheme. They're understanding the swarm defense more, which allows them to play like players. And I think that is going to be, you guys can quote me here, that is going to be the strength of this defense, is that those guys can run around that field and be a football player under this defense. And you can just tell, you mentioned his energy. He is excited to coach this team. He's excited about the identity of a Swarm defense. He told me, I said, what are some qualities that you need to see translate from fall camp that you've learned about this group until, Saturday's gameplay? And he said that the energy and passion has to translate along with when you watch game tape. Alabama needs to be at a fever pitch, and you will know in the first, I think he said 6 to 8 seconds, if that team is there and they need to arrive there.
I agree with that. All right, final question. Give us the vibe in Tuscaloosa right now. I mean, I'm sure that you can smell football in the air. I bet that the band's practicing. The kids are back on campus. You got to wait because they're going to walk right in front of your car at the crosswalk, and then one straggler is going to come when you think it's time to move. Give us the mental picture of what you're seeing right now outside of the beautiful script day right there at the Bryant, Bryant building, Malmore building.
Yeah, Malmore. You said it best. You can feel it in the air. And we've been down here since the spring. The weather is getting to that sweet spot. It's still so hot down here, but there's football, so it just feels right. There's students everywhere, athletes walking around. You can tell that this city is ready for football. And I think that there's an expectancy with Coach DeBoer kind of ushering into this role. But I'm going to take a lap around campus before I head out. And like you said, I think I've already almost hit like 2 students already. When do classes start? I think it's this week that classes have started. Maybe last week. But it's funny. I noticed as I was walking over here, I was like, there are a lot more people around town. And it's exciting. I was sitting there and I was kind of taking it all in. And Greg Byrne walks in. He's like, "Oh, are you guys all here for me? What's the deal here?" And hearing his excitement and just how, him saying happy week 1, it's like, it's here. We're ready. Me and Clint will be at the game this weekend. So excited for that. We'll have a lot of content for you guys coming out of that. But I'm excited to work with you guys this season and get to experience Alabama in year 2 under Coach DeBoer.
Awesome. Well, Roll Tide, thank you for the help, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
All right, that's Emily Grace. Great job there, Clint, getting an update from campus. I love an update from campus. And what a beautiful day, the script day. I mean, that's what it's all about right now. What I want to ask you guys before we get back into our conversation is to make sure that if you can do it, join covercrimson.com. Clint spends a lot of his day there throwing up stories, being on the message board. We're adding video content that's exclusive to being a member there. You can sign up for $1. Now, if you get the annual membership, you get the Cover Crimson t-shirt, which has become a huge hit. Everybody wants one of these t-shirts. They're comfortable. They look beautiful. They're crimson with white, and they'll be great for any tailgate or game day party. Right, Clint?
Oh yeah. I thought about wearing my Cover Crimson shirt for a second show in a row. I wore it on Friday. I decided, you know what? I'll save it for later this week. But yeah, we got a lot going on. Covercrimson.com. Obviously, we've already put out the depth chart stuff, but there's a lot that we're going to be doing this week as far as some players to watch, both from the Alabama perspective and from Western Kentucky's perspective as well. Some guys, maybe it's not as known of a team, but just going in kind of what you can expect from Western Kentucky. It's nothing like overly long as far as the written content, because it's a message board thing. It's more of bullet points, but it's just some things to keep some eyes on. Obviously a lot going on with Alabama and really still got some position battles and things to look at, but there's a bunch of guys, especially with it being a group of 5 school. Alabama's a 30+ point favorite. Some people might feel like that's low, but Western Kentucky was a pretty good team last year. They went to a bowl game. They got that air raid offense. Defensively, they haven't been great, but they can score points. And then now that you got TJ Finley starting at quarterback or being announced as a starting quarterback, I would assume they're going to continue to sling the ball around a little bit because he did for Texas State last year. But a lot going on. We're going to be dissecting all of it at covercrimson.com. Only $1 for a month. Plus, you get that sweet t-shirt. So absolutely, Mick.
Sweet. All right. We went through who we thought were going to be our 4 award winners, at least on our channel, who we thought, and you said Jalen Milroe. I'm going to agree with you on Jalen Milroe, but it's good to see Emily Grace down on campus. And then it kind of gets us to where we are right now. And that's moving forward, planning for TJ Finley as LSU, as Auburn Tiger, and now as a Western Kentucky Hill topper, which is really interesting. It's the world of college football now, right? 4 schools, 4 years. I mean, that's just the way it goes. But you know what? He's going to bring in experience. I mean, I don't think that the atmosphere is going to be too much for him. Just because, he's been there, done that. And the guy's been a starter before in the SEC. What do you see, though, as far as Alabama's preparation to get ready for Finley moving forward from where we are right now? And guys, as you hang out, thumbs up, everybody. Make sure that you do that on the page. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. But thanks for hanging out with us, Clint.
I mean, they're really offense is where you got to start, and it's nothing against their defense. And maybe I end up in a clip somewhere talking about this, firing up the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers defense. Maybe I'm a reason they come out firing on all cylinders or something real passionate. I don't know, but just defensively, they weren't great last year, but they got an offense that can score with, a lot of your big time offenses in college football, or at least they did last year. I thought Caden Veltkamp, who was the guy who ended up starting their bowl game, or actually he didn't start, he ended up coming in that bowl game against Old Dominion. He threw for like close to 400 yards. He had over 52 pass attempts, 5 touchdowns. I thought kind of he fit their system and what they do maybe a little bit better than TJ Finley. But Finley, I think, did show a lot at Texas State last year. He's a big body guy. It's hard to bring down if you're a defensive lineman, or anybody trying to sack him for that matter. Got a little bit of mobility as long as his ankle holds up, which it didn't in Auburn a few years ago. But, we're expecting him to be 100% healthy. So I would expect him to be able to sling the football around. Dalvin Smith, they got a really good receiver, kind of an X receiver, kind of a more bigger body guy, 6'2", 195-ish. He's not like overly big, but he's kind of that, kind of their go-to guy. Easton Messer, they got him running in the slot. On some preseason awards watch list, he's going to be effective. So they got different players. And Quantavius Leslie, their left guard, is another one who's going to be an all-conference player. He's pretty good. But this is more of a test for Alabama's young secondary. I keep calling it a young secondary. It's more of a young cornerback room. It's a new secondary when you're referring to everybody, because you got Keon Sabb as well. But, it's going to be a test for them. They're going to want to push the ball vertically downfield, and Alabama needs to be prepared for that. They need to be able to apply pressure on TJ Finley, make him as uncomfortable as possible. And then it's a lot of, how well do your cornerbacks hold up? And we'll see how that ends up turning out. But I would say the big focus right now, obviously everybody's going to have their roles. They're all preparing in different ways, all the different positions. But from a fan's perspective, keeping an eye on that offense, the air raid offense, wanting to throw the football around it, and how Alabama's secondary holds up.
Couple from you guys in the comments section. So throw them up there right now before we get out. Here's one. Big plays are nice, but this offense has to be consistent on third down. Well said, Jim. I mean, that's, you don't want to be kind of like a Tennessee last year, unable to convert on third downs and, lose a lot of the big games. Alabama under Nick Saban has always seemed to be able to convert on third downs. And that is going to be crucial this year so that Alabama doesn't look like Tennessee.
I think that's actually that was, in my opinion, the last few years, even when you talk about the Bryce Young led offenses, really it was a problem last year, and it was a problem under Bill O'Brien as well. But I felt like they weren't as good on third downs. And, you saw a lot of situations where they couldn't stay on the field to give the defense a break. You weren't seeing complimentary football. A lot of 3 and outs, it felt like. Way too many compared to most offenses that we've seen. So maybe really that's where the focus should go. Maybe it wasn't as much. I'd have to go look at the numbers, but maybe it wasn't as much of a third down problem as it was just going through and 3 and out constantly. It was way too many, offense would get out there, 3 plays later, defense is back out there again. And it's like, okay, that can't happen consistently in some of these bigger games. So, that's something to keep an eye on. And, even like Kalen DeBoer, he's kind of hinted at the fact that, he would like to see a little bit more as far as not putting yourself in unfavorable situations. He's discussed that the pass rush is really taking advantage of its opportunities when they've been able to put the offense in those types of situations. And when you're talking about Jalen Milroe and just how he likes to operate, how you can make him comfortable as a quarterback, you talk about this offensive line. I think scheme's going to protect the offensive line quite a bit, compared to last year. I think it's going to be better as far as the loss weight and being able to hold up in pass protection more. but I still wouldn't say it's ideally suited for those 3rd and long situations. I think they can survive a lot more in those situations than they did last year. But you've got to be able to put yourself, if it's going to be 3rd downs, put yourself in favorable 3rd down situations, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, a 3rd and 3 where the entire playbook is open to you. The defense has to respect everything, especially if you've got the run game that we think Alabama's going to have, and let Jalen Milroe do some work off of that. I think some magical things can happen if you can have success on early down, putting yourself in favorable situations on 3rd down.
Clint, if talking smack, and I want to use a different word, but I'm not going to do it this time of day, was a championship sport, then Tennessee would be like Alabama has been on the football field. And it's good to see some of our Vol friends here, including Tennessee Toes Tall. Never in my life have I seen a mediocre team get so much hype. And then Steven Vols, love that. Y'all overhyping Bama. They ain't going to be great this year. Look, Vol friends, you guys should probably worry about Florida. I mean, that dynasty that is the Florida Gators before you worry about the team that beat you 17 out of 18 years or whatever it is. But I'm glad that you're here. Look, you're welcome here. You're welcome here. And I hope that Oklahoma, that Heupel gets his revenge on Oklahoma. I mean, I'm going to be pulling for Tennessee when they play that one game, just because of the way that he got run out of town by Bob Stoops, right? But you got to take care of Florida before. Don't come to the Bama message board and start throwing out a bunch of shade on Alabama. I'm sorry, Clint, not to slow you down, but if this was Georgia, I'd be like, hey, you guys have won 1 out of 5, but 1 was a championship, so I'll give you that, and you won 2 championships. You guys can't beat Florida, and you beat Alabama 1 out of 17 games, so probably swing it over to the Vandy message board where you have been dominant. You have dominated Vandy.
Eventually, these conversations, this trash talking can translate to where, I mean, I don't blame them. A lot of the preseason talk needs to happen preseason. You need to get that talk in now. I think Tennessee is going to be pretty good. I think they got a favorable schedule, which helps them. So they're going to probably even look. I've told people I could see Tennessee finishing 10-2, and I could see Georgia finishing 10-2. If that happens, Georgia is still a much better football team than Tennessee. Period. This is all schedule related. So they might look like equals. They will not be equals, in my opinion. Now that could change, based off of what I actually see. But I mean, yeah, if anybody that's lost, 16 of the last 17 years, they've been conditioned to, hey, let's start talking before things go live, because once they do, might not have a whole lot that we can talk about. So I understand it. I get it. But, we're only a few days away from where that's got to stop.
Man, I actually like Tennessee of the rivals, because I hate Auburn. I don't mind Tennessee that much, probably because, I spend a lot of time in that area. But they talk a gang of smack, man. I mean, for a team that won 1 time on a last-second field goal in 17 years, or they'd be 0 for 17. They come in talking so much crap, and it's so funny because they'll call in your call-in show, they'll get in your message board. I don't know any other fan base. They're like that. They're like that guy that gets beat up all the time, but just keeps coming back for more of an ass whooping. Like it's
wasn't it South Carolina a couple of weeks later? Was it South Carolina?
Yeah,
that ended up beating them. It's like, I mean,
they had some internal issues though, Clint. Like their quarterback and their star linebacker apparently got into a fight. That's what they said over money. NIL money is what everybody said, and it's a shame too, because that team, that was Hooker, right? That would have been Hendon Hooker. It was a great quarterback in college. That was what we ended up getting hurt in that game. And I think they would have had a rematch that year against Georgia. I know Georgia won the national championship. They slid through that because they didn't have to play us. They got the run. They threw in TCU, and then TCU got absolutely mauled to death in that football game. But they're still on the schedule for us. They have a much easier schedule than we do. And honestly, at this point, I mean, it's exciting to have these tough schedules, but I mean, look at Florida State. They got a tough schedule for the ACC, and they already lost a game. We've already counted them out. I think for Alabama, that that you can't lose a lot of these games. I mean, I think they've got to beat either Tennessee. I think Alabama's going to maybe lose one game, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go undefeated. Maybe I'm crazy for saying that, but I don't think there's going to be that much of a drop off this year.
Well, I mean, and I agree with you. I don't think there's gonna be much of a drop off. And I'll say this. I mean, it feels like I've said like the three, and this doesn't mean that a Missouri can't get you or going to Norman can't get you.
Love
But
these
but if
Clint
you
used to live up there.
I did well, I was a kid, and like I said, the 3 years I lived up there, it was they were all losses. That was in that 7-year stretch where Tennessee won 7 straight, and then the year we moved home.
They don't believe it's been like 20 years now.
Yeah. I'm an old guy now. I was a young pup back then,
geez.
real young. I'll put it that way. I was just starting to get in like the whole football thing. I was like 9, 10, 11,
Right.
starting to watch it a little bit. Obviously, my dad was super passionate, so all I knew was pretty much, hey, on Saturdays, Dad gets a little fired up about something, and then you start paying attention to what's going on and losing games they shouldn't. That 1999 season though was pretty fun, obviously. But I've said about the schedule, it feels like the three biggest threats are LSU on the road, Tennessee on the road, and Georgia. Wouldn't be shocked at all if they go 1-2 in those games.
And the officials that Tennessee had the last time we played there.
I'm sure as soon as they announce, I'll be curious to see how that's for a future conversation. But as soon as they announce the officials for that game, we'll see how that ends up turning out. But I could see Alabama losing 2 of those games. I could also see them, winning 2 of the 3, maybe even winning all 3, but it's a tough schedule. What's wild though is that you're talking, you could lose 2 of those 3. And some people even believe you could lose all 3 because they're talking about some 9-3 teams being in the college football playoff hunt now that it's 12 teams, and Alabama could still get in. And that's just a very wild concept to me. That gives you a little bit more freedom. I think as far as these tougher schedules, it has gotten tougher on any given Saturday. It's going to be better opponents with, kind of it being a more juiced up SEC. But I also think that you've been given a little bit more leeway as far as, the games you can lose. Doesn't mean that you need to take any mulligans or anything like that and just accept defeat on something. But I'll be curious to see how it all ends up playing out, because at the end of this year, man, do you think a 9-3 team gets into the playoffs? Because a lot of people are starting to talk about that, and it's something that for whatever reason I didn't really ever entertain. And then when it got brought up and you start looking at the research, and a lot of those teams that were in that number 11, 12 range have been 9-3 in the past. So, okay, well, who do you put up there? So yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, maybe it is possible. We've seen Alabama drop 2 games and they're down there in that, 8-9 range. I don't know. What do you think about it?
We lose 3 games, we're not getting in. I mean, like they don't want to see Alabama in. They're tired of seeing Alabama. They'd bury us. I mean, you got Feinbaum saying that the dynasty's over, and our own ex-coach doesn't even pick us to win the SEC, and he put half the players on the field. So I mean, there's a media, and I get it. It's reverse rat poison.
It's not though.
But it's not. That's how he feels. And look, I'm fine with that. I get with that, but I disagree. I think that he's underestimating, and they're underestimating how good this offense is going to be and how experienced this offense is going to be. Milroe and it's all on Milroe. I mean, I just feel like Milroe's the guy that's got to orchestrate this offense to the point where you don't want to mess with these guys. We keep talking about Ryan Williams and Cedric Law and those guys making plays, Prentice catching balls. We keep talking about the tight ends. What can Dupree do? What can Oots do? How good the offensive line's going to be? How good the running backs are going to be? How good's Milroe going to be running the football this year too, based off of the other stuff that we never talk about that. And I think that that's going to be one of the differences this year with Tommy Rees, where he's scared to get hurt and he's scared to run. And then the next week he's not afraid to run. And it's like, look, you got to go all out. And if something happens, we got another guy named Ty Simpson, who's from Tennessee, ironically, who can come in and run the show. But you can't play tentatively. They did that in the bowl game against Michigan, and that's why they ended up losing in overtime. I think if they would have played all out in that game, particularly with the quarterback running, they would have been okay. So that's kind of how I feel like the offense is going to lead this team. But if Alabama loses 3 games, they're not getting in. They're just not. They're going to find somebody else to keep Alabama out. I can only imagine that, but I don't think that's going to happen, man. I mean, when's the last time Alabama lost 3 games, Clint?
No, yeah, no, I've pegged them. And here's the thing: I can't say much about Nick Saban because I predicted the same SEC championship. I said Texas, Georgia, and I understand where he's coming from. So it would be very hypocritical of me to judge Nick Saban. But I do try to be as unbiased as when it comes to the actual. Now I'll pick fun, I'll troll, let's have some fun with it. But when we're talking strictly X's and O's and stuff, Alabama to me has more question marks right now. But here's the thing: because we're following the program as closely as we are, we're quickly realizing there's some potential solutions on the horizon here. Like the cornerback room might actually be pretty good. Zabian Brown is looking like he's going to end up being a starter.
Yeah.
And it's not because Alabama has to have him as a starter. It's because he's been that good. And then you talk about Damani Jackson, and so what my point is that this is making a prediction before fall camp even starts at SEC Media Days. And, so as you learn some more about this team and you start hearing about potential solutions, you start feeling better about it. I will say, whether you're talking about like an Oregon, an Ohio State, a Georgia, there are the few elite teams, in my opinion, that are going to be in that elite conversation this year where you say, okay, how many teams in college football right now can you say is going to have one of the best scoring offenses? They're going to be one of the most dynamite elite offenses in college football with one of the, maybe their defense isn't elite, but it doesn't really have to be. A lot of your elite offenses, they typically come with terrible defenses. Right. So how many of them have the potential to have a complementary, compatible defense that can, make some plays, get some stops when they need to, and things like that? Alabama's one of those few teams. And then you start throwing in the coaching staff, which we've talked about being as good as it's been in quite a while. You start talking about special teams and the fact that Alabama has the best specialist in college football, or could potentially have the best combination of specialists in college football. And it's like, okay, I mean, I understand where I've put Texas and Georgia in the SEC championship. I still probably would lean in that direction, but I will say right now it is way closer than it was a month ago. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if, I'm having to eat my words a little bit because Alabama ends up going 11-1 or maybe undefeated, ends up playing in the SEC championship game, has a first round bye. Mick, I will say though, obviously we're all pulling for that first round bye. That's priority. But a playoff game in Tuscaloosa,
everybody keeps saying that.
Epic. It would not be fun. That would be a blast. I'm getting hyped just thinking about it.
Our show's brought to you by MyBookie. We've all been there before. A weekend trip to the casino canceled because real life came calling. MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game. Dive into a truly realistic casino experience featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. The MyBookie casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action is in your own hands, and you don't even have to wear pants. Start at MyBookie today, even if you're a Tennessee fan, with a generous sign-up bonus using the promo code NEXTROUND, and a revamped loyalty program ensures a host of exclusive VIP perks. The more you play, the more you win, only with MyBookie. Guys, and I mean this, all of you guys, thank you for hanging out with us today. This has been so much fun. Comment section. I love it. I love it when I look in there and I see the fire getting going. Let's be respectful to each other. But talking smack is what makes college football season so much fun, man. It's like going to these road games. You go to Wisconsin, it's going to be fun there. You come to Tuscaloosa, it's going to be fun at our home games and all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about the tailgate show, Clint, from Tuscaloosa. We're going to do it out on the Strip in front of the old Eagans. It's called Unique on the Strip, 1-3 this Friday with the legendary national championship winning quarterback Jake Coker. How about that? And then Jake and I will be hanging on here soon with Elephant in the Room, kind of based on his schedule. We always do it based on his schedule. We got a lot of other great stuff, though, coming on the channel, Clint, and it's been so much fun, man. I mean, we do this show every day. We'll be back tomorrow at 1:00, but some of the other good stuff that folks can count on.
Yeah, I mean, it's I can't believe it's game week, man. Like, just starting to watch a lot more Western Kentucky, putting some of that stuff together as far as the content that we're going to be having. Stacy Blackwood and I, we're going to do Wednesday and Thursday is kind of, and this is going to be every single week. We're going to be doing like Alabama's offense versus the opponent's defense. And then the next day, we're going to do Alabama's defense versus the opponent's offense. And Stacy and I are going to be breaking that down, looking at everything, what you can expect, some key players, doing all those things. That should be a great, resource for anybody wanting to know more about the upcoming opponent and just how Alabama stacks up against them. Maybe you don't have a ton of interest in Alabama versus Western Kentucky, but I mean, there's some coming up, Wisconsin, Georgia, some really big games on the horizon, not too far away, that we're going to be doing all this stuff on as well. That's going to be in video form, but we're going to be doing a lot of this stuff in written form over on the message board as well. And really the conversations, what ends up happening is I share some of this stuff and then people have questions about it. And so the message board is a great place to go ask those questions, and I answer all of them. I want you going into the weekend without, you worrying about anything. And if anybody asks you, if you're at work and someone says, hey man, what do you know about Western Kentucky? I want you to be able to share everything you've learned from this channel and from the message board and be able to give them a rundown on everything they possibly need to know about the Hilltoppers, South Florida, Wisconsin, Georgia, everybody. So it's very much a complimentary thing as far as Cover Crimson YouTube channel versus covercrimson.com. And so go sign up. It's only $1. And we're getting off to a fast, fun week, Mick.
And if you do the annual membership, you get the t-shirt and they'll mail that out immediately to you. So you'll have it maybe if you do it right now before kickoff on Saturday. But thanks guys for hanging out with us. And again, Roll Tide. For Clint Lamb, I'm Mick Gillispie.